A table of businessmen are sitting at a restaurant and they are swapping stories about the sales that they've made. One says, I sold this woman an expensive warranty she didn't even need. And another one counters with, I sold this immigrant who could barely speak English an opened box of a used product, and he had no clue that it was used. And another one says, oh God, people can be so stupid sometimes. Yeah. I found, says another one, the best day to sell something is Saturday or Sunday, because that's when people are bored. They're so bored they'll buy anything. That's my secret. He goes, that's why I won Salesman of the Year this year. And he shows his fitness watch that he won to the rest of the salespeople around the table, and they all lean in and they're drooling over that prize. And one of them says, I'm going to win that one next year when I am Salesman of the Year. And they notice that at an adjacent table there is this kind-looking older woman who's staring at them, awkwardly staring at them. And then she gets up from her table and she walks over and she's keeping her focus on the best dressed of the salesmen, the one with the fitness watch. And she comes over and she sits down at the empty chair beside him and says, I apologize for interrupting, intruding on your meal, but I just had to come over here and say, you look just like my son who died recently. And the salesman he's moved emotionally, he's taken back, and he nods and says, oh, don't worry about it. And then as he says that, she kind of gasps and said, and you even sound like my son. So there's a moment of emotion in their voices, and the woman, she gets up to go back to her table, and then she pauses and she says to the younger man, would you be so kind as to do me a favor and give me a hug? I want to feel, again, what it's like to be held by my son. And the salesman, he agrees. He gets up and he gives her a hug, and they hug back. And she then, with emotion in her voice, whispers in his ear, would it be asking too much if as I go you could simply say, goodbye, Mother. I never got to hear my son say goodbye. And the young man, he whispers, goodbye, Mother, into her ear. And the two strangers part ways, and she heads back to her table as their server brings them their food, and they go on with their lives. When she's finished eating her meal, and the salesman sees her getting up to go, and she looks back at him and she says, goodbye, son. And the salesman, moved, he calls back across the room for everyone to hear, goodbye, Mother. And she walks out into the parking lot. And then the server comes and brings the table of salesmen their bill, and they notice there's an extra charge of $75 on it. And they're confused about it, and they ask, what's this from? And she says, but your mother said that you were buying her supper for her. How many commandments were broken in that story? How many commandments of the ones we just heard from Deuteronomy got broken because someone was being dishonest about honoring a parent, honoring a mother. Did you catch the things that were broken in there? Anyone notice? There was bearing false witness, so lying, but there were a few people who were lying in the story. The big one and the creative one against these arrogant salespeople was from this older woman, but the salespeople were boasting about the ways in which they've changed the facts in order to sell something. Thou shalt not bear false witness. That's something you heard. There was stealing that went on. That woman, she stole herself a $75 meal. And notice while she was doing it, and we found out, I think there's part of us is like, way to go, way to go. So, thou shalt not steal. There's a whole bunch of coveting going on. That prize, that wonderful salesperson of the year, a fitness watch. I want what you have. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's stuff, is one of the commandments. Did you catch the taking the Lord's name in vain? Probably not, because it's just so commonplace. You didn't even catch that your minister did it from the front of the church on a Sunday morning. It's commonplace. And not keeping the Sabbath holy. Did you catch that one? People are so bored on Saturdays and Sundays, they'll spend anything. I put Saturday and Sunday in there because we don't want to get into a debate about what is the Sabbath, Saturday or the Lord's Day, which is Sunday. A number of commandments that got broken, but you would agree with me, no one broke the law in any of those moments. A great number of these commandments, the 10 Commandments, you can break them without breaking the law. There's no, you're thinking, well, there's a law against murder. But there isn't a law against taking the Lord's name in vain. It's filler. In the public domain, sometimes that's the only time you hear anyone talk about God or Jesus Christ, is when they're breaking that commandment. No one gets hauled off to jail. Even though you may be remembering how when you were a child, you got hauled off to the principal's office or something, or grandma gave you a talking to. No one got arrested because no one ran out and called the police on that woman for stealing a $75 meal. Stealing happens all the time in our society. The manipulation of folk through bearing false witness to get things that don't belong to you. No one goes to jail. Coveting, wanting what others have. No one gets thrown in jail. In fact, it's celebrated. Keeping the Sabbath holy. No one's getting thrown in jail for going off to shop on a Saturday, Jewish Sabbath, or a Sunday, the Lord's Day in the Christian faith, to have people who are underpaid, part-time serve us so that we can have our conveniences. No one's getting arrested for, I said taking the Lord's name in vain, but cussing and swearing. You can fly a 4-letter flag with Trudeau's name on it in this community along your truck through neighborhoods of young children learning to speak, so they have to ask their mom or their grandma, what's that word? No one's getting thrown in jail. But we know that even though these behaviors are not illegal against the law, there's something about them that are important. We know that there's There's a difference between the law, jurisprudence, the law, and ethics. The law is about some outside authority enforcing standards of conduct by us. But ethics is about our own selves, self-regulating, making free choices about what it is that we do. Character comes from living that kind of life, of having a moral compass within us. As Christians, as followers of Jesus Christ, we're law-abiding citizens. Well, none of us, because we drive 120 on the 402 instead of 110. But that's okay. But in addition to being law-abiding citizens, we attempt to be people of character, to live into the character of Jesus Christ, to make choices that are moral, that make for a just society. I read to you that lengthy bit about the giving of the Ten Commandments, and then right after that, we have this distillation of all those commandments. And you'll recognize this because Jesus echoes it and tacks on the golden rule with it. But what does it mean to follow an external rule, and what does it mean to write it on your heart, to have character? Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone you shall love, the Lord your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Keep these words that I'm commanding you today in your heart. We are called to shape our hearts in ways that help us to make the right decision. Not just the technically legal decision. To write this on your heart. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might. Love, love, love. Live into God's grace and God's abundance. Where in your life today do you need to mature that inner moral compass? Where in our lives collectively do we need to bring, through our example, God's love into a world that seems to have some days no moral fiber about it? How do we live into that? It's Thanksgiving, and we're reminded that giving thanks is about giving our best. Not just technically I gave my mother, brought some food for my mother. Not the bare minimum. Not the legally required amount of son's due diligence at Thanksgiving. But how do we give our best? To remember that Thanksgiving is thanks plus giving. Our world needs it. You've probably heard, it's becoming quite common these days for people just to go into grocery stores, grab an empty cart, wheel it to the back of the grocery store to the meat counter, and just fill it up with meat, different kinds of meat, and then just waltz out of the store into the parking lot, unobstructed, and take it away, stealing it all. You've heard that story. You know that happens. And are you like me? You hear that and you think, what is the remedy there? By the time the police are called, the person's long gone onto the 402 and to the back roads not to be found. Are you like me and you think, what can we do about that? We don't want a society like that. We know that workers in grocery stores, they're told they can't intervene. The lawyers and the accountants have crunched the numbers and studied the laws and realized that it's a greater liability to intervene than to not. And are you like me and you think, how do we live in a world like this? I heard a story recently that I think one of the stores in town or somewhere in the area, someone tried doing that, bringing a shopping cart of stolen goods to just waltz out of the store knowing no one could stop them. And one of the employees, grabbed the cart and was wrestling to stop the person. And that employee was fired because it's written in the contract you can't intervene. And are you like me and you think, oh my, what's the world that we're living in? What can we do? What we do is we live as a gospel people. We live in a way that is more than just the bare minimum. Because a society of ours, which is just about to snap, needs more than just the bare minimum from us. It needs people who carry around in their hearts, in their souls, thanks. That we give our best to the people who we don't think deserve it, but we give our best knowing that we're giving it to God. And we give it in a way that has written on our hearts a character that attempts to follow Jesus Christ so that maybe we can rub off on the world and maybe somebody will experience some grace from our actions and they will think about how they too can be a source of love and a source of grace. Happy Thanksgiving. Give your best and give it into a world that is hungry for God's grace.